Wincinnati, we're back with Bengals talking pre-draft prospects live on the Wincinnati podcast. Let's go. It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm AC.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still going to give you the same AJ.
I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I got to get your top 5 receivers. Better, man.
Good. Watch out for us.
Welcome to the Wincinnati Pod. I am Zim. I'm here rolling dolo. My man Ace had some prior engagements that he had to go and get in touch with and get some stuff done. So we're going to champion that. We're going to support him with that. Everything's all good. We're just cooking like we always do. I'm back again, like I never left. Not too much going on in Bengals world. I know in the ultimate NFL world, they gave teams an extra $8 million in cap space. So we get that number to $250 million. That's one of the top, I guess, news topics today. Aside from that, just me cooking people online, not liking anybody in our division, keeping it moving, and looking at prospects every single day, and now getting closer and closer to the combine. I now have something that I think that I can help everybody out with. We're going to take a deep dive into the NFL draft today. I got a couple of guys that have been doing some fantastic work that I think can help us out in our quest to get, I don't know, Brock Bowers, Newton, whoever you want. But we're going to talk through these different spots, and we're going to make sure that we get you guys ready, guys and girls ready for the NFL draft. I want to introduce my guy Ryan and my guy Andrew from Gridiron Grading. How you guys doing this evening? What's up?
Good, man. It's good to see you, Zim. We're pumped to get behind, get out in front of the GG logo. I know we've been tweeting for the last 2 years. Talk some prospects, specifically some linemen. I don't know how you feel about that, Ryan.
Yeah, the night's going well. Trenches are definitely on top of our minds. Zim, thank you so much for having us. We're super excited to be here joining you in the Wincinnati family. And like Andrew said, we're happy to sort of step behind the logo and show who we are and talk about some Bengals draft needs and get this night started.
Yes, sir. I feel like I would be a little bit remiss if I didn't give people, or you give people, a little bit of background on how you get into your grading system, what pushed you to this point, and talk to the people before we start getting into the grading or prospects or anything like that. What goes into your grading system that makes it look so good to average people like myself?
Yeah, right on. Happy to take that, Zim. I mean, how did we get started? I mean, we're Bengals fans. We've been Bengals fans for 20 years. The Bengals stunk for a long time. We were trying to figure out why their draft picks weren't hitting. And with the rise of analytics, we thought, what better way to use some of our knowledge? We were both college football players, bring that out into the analytic world. And what we think makes our board so special, I think it's using some of these analytics. We talked a little bit about, I know before we came out here, Zim, about the PFF analytics. They go deep into the numbers. There's tons there. So we've been building out for the last 4 years profiles that look at production, not in the standard sense when you're talking touchdowns, receptions, interceptions. We're talking win rates, yards per coverage snap for cornerbacks, and we're weighting that against, we have over 10,000 prospects in our database that we've taken from the PFF raw data and putting those in percentiles. And so when you see our prospect scores, it's essentially a weighted percentile ranking of these players. And then that production part's really unique, I think, to us. And then we do grab some of that athleticism data from the combine. I'll have to shout out Math Bomb here. I know we all see him. He does great work. And then on the film side, I know we get a lot of questions online. Why aren't you watching the film? When I watched the film, this guy looked great. I mean, we build boards for over 500 prospects. We're not watching these guys individually. I mean, we watch college football during the year, but we have a list of analysts that we really like, and we pull from their big boards. And so that is our last third of the film part. But yeah, we like to think it's aesthetically pleasing, nice to follow during the draft, and we're pumped to share it to all the fans. And I know Bengals Kingdom is really, we need a big draft this year, so excited about that.
Watching everybody around the league and then watching the success that they had through the draft and how it pertains to like your team ascending and not allocating all of your money in free agency. I feel like the draft is at an all-time, like, I feel like high right now, especially for a Bengals fan. Ryan, coming into this process, was the draft something that you had, just always thought like, hey, look, this is something I want to get involved with, or is it something that you're just like now, like, hey, look, it just led me into this path?
Yeah, so the draft has always been near and dear to my heart because when I think of building a roster, especially in a sport like football that has a salary cap, there's only so much space you can allocate to each individual player. But the league gives you a mechanism like the draft where you have cost controlled athletes coming in on contracts that are as long as 4, if not 5 years. And you really have the ability, and for lack of a better word, the freedom to be able to build your roster with someone like a young quarterback that allows you to then pour all of your resources into positions like the offensive line or the wide receivers to help really him develop and maximize his ability. So it's something that's always really intrigued me. And as Andrew mentioned before, at least throughout the majority of our lifetime, the Bengals haven't had the most playoff success, let alone the most regular season success, even. So it was a natural transition to that draft point as well. And then just seeing how a lot of the teams recently who have been succeeding in the league have struck not only their first round or second round draft picks, but even their late day 3 draft picks to ride that success all the way to Super Bowls and other AFC and NFC championships. It really just lit that fire underneath us to, again, hop on that draft bandwagon and really lead the charge for the Bengals to hopefully bring about some positive change this upcoming draft season and into the near future as well.
Okay. All right. Now that we got the, the foundation set here, we're going to get into, if time permits, we're going to put you guys on the hot seat later on and get into we're going to get into a live simulator. But before then, I'm going to assume that when we go into this all season currently right now and head into the draft, if we talked about this a little bit just now, I think most Bengals fans currently right now are putting a big emphasis on the trenches. Would you agree, or am I off? Like you got another position group you want to look at first?
I fully agree with that, Zim. I mean, the way the Bengals, and we're not going to dive into, roster cost, things of that nature. We're draft guys at heart, but they've been paying free agents, and I don't think that's sustainable long term. They need to figure out a way to draft. And we'll talk about tackles, I'm sure. I know there's back and forth online, but we think this is really a generational class, and there should be a guy there that makes a ton of sense and is cheap, young, ideally athletic. And so as the way we look at it, tackle is definitely should be the target there. But I think in general, if a guy like Brock Bowers falls, there's a blue chip player. I don't know if I could pass that up.
See, now you're talking my language. You're talking Bowers season, baby. Can I say this though? What do you say to the person that says, okay, well, I'm so sick and tired of talking. The generational tackle part was very important that you just stated that. But there's going to be a person that's listening right now that says, I'm so sick and tired of the Bengals not drafting offensive tackles at the beginning of a draft. There's going to be another person that says, well, just sign Mike Onway and be done with it. Why are we even looking at tackles? Whereas, or it might be another guy that says, well, let's just get Eleanor, let's get Trent Brown or somebody like that, and maybe the Bengals can skip it. Do you have a perspective or a thought idea on like that whole concept of going to free agency for the tackle position as it pertains to the amount of guys that'll be there at the draft that maybe are NFL ready?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one on, Andrew. I think there's definitely a lot of names that have been floated out there for filling the potential right tackle vacancy if Jonah Williams leaves or for whatever reason he doesn't stay with the team. But what I think we take away from that from a draft perspective is that we've seen a lot of these players for a lengthy bit of their career now, and Wennu, Illuminor have been in the league for 3+ years, if not more. And we're fairly certain, at least from an analytical standpoint, of what their ceiling and what their floors are. And when you look at the upcoming offensive tackle class that's available in the draft, like Andrew mentioned, you have some 20, 21-year-old athletes that have incredible college production that we're expecting to test absolutely off the charts. And when you compare what their floors and what their ceilings can be from now to 4 years' time, while it might be great to have a 1 or 2 year stopgap with some of those free agent tackles available on the market, unless you're willing to pay those $20+ million elite blue chip current NFL talents, to us, it makes a lot more sense to spend that premium pick in the draft and really invest in that tackle position.
Yes, sir. And I'm with you. I think for me, I don't want to go into the draft with a gaping hole at the position. So maybe a stopgap guy that can kind of like just fill that spot, just so I'm not forced into it. But you might have a thought process on this where you could leave it open based off of, this is the board that I'm gonna pull up first from you guys. This is kind of what gave me a little bit of steam and said, I like where these guys are headed. I'm really high on Mims. I'm not as high on Latham. I really like that. Can you talk to people about anything that just jumps out to you about the offensive tackles in the top 10 of your production scores with Gridiron Grading?
Yeah, I'll start, Zim. I think first Joe Alt. He's not going to be on the board, but he is the best tackle we've looked at in 4 years, expecting him to test incredibly well.
Hold on. Joe Alt on the board and Bowers is on the board, and you're the Titans, or you're one of those teams at the top like the Chargers or something like that. Are you taking Bowers or Alt?
Joe Alt. I think he's going to be top 3 on our board. I love Brock Bowers. I mean, if you're deciding between Latham and Bowers, that's a different story, but Joe Alt is your Penei Sewell, your Rashawn Slater, whatever you want to say there. He is that good. He's just rock solid across the board. He had no penalties last year, doesn't let up sacks. He's probably going to be a top-tier athlete. He was 20 years old when he was doing it. You don't find that very often. So he's the pinnacle of tackle here. And I think as you move down the list, Amarius Mims, I think, is the one we've been really pounding the table for and getting a lot of hate online, I think, of a guy who's only played seven or eight games he started. So I think if we're going down that lane, you probably do want to sign a guy that's a stopgap just in case. But Mims, he's 21 years old. He, a few years removed from being the number 3 prospect in all of high school football. And when he did play, his production looked like a lot of the top tier all pro tackles that are in the NFL right now. So he was behind Ryan, right? Correct me if I'm wrong here, McClendon and Broderick Jones at Georgia, both NFL football players. So I think that did limit some of his ceiling. But when he did play versus Ohio State as a 19-year-old, he had one of the best games of his career. He just looks like a guy that is worth that risk. And the way we look at production, he has been phenomenal as a pass blocker. And so I'm expecting him to test well too. And so he's the target if I'm sitting at 18 right now that we really like there. So that's a guy that we're excited about. There's
how and I think Bengals Twitter initially opened with the Talisi Fuaga. I don't know what the nickname is online or whatever, but how realistic is it for Fuaga to be there at 18? Is that just based off of the combine, you think, or is that like a pipe dream at this point?
Yeah, I think it's realistic in the sense that there's always a possibility a player could fall, and that's in air quotes, because I do think, in our opinion, he's going to be gone well before 18. But what we've seen from a lot of different analysts out there is Fuaga has a different position on the board somewhere within that 1 to 20 range. So if a lot of the people in the audience right now are doing mock draft simulators, there's a good chance maybe every 2 or 3 out of 10 times he's going to be there for the Bengals selection. So I definitely wouldn't rule it out. But I think looking at the graph that you have there on the screen, Zim, just with how dominant this most recent season Fuaga put up at Oregon State, especially at the right tackle position when we've seen a lot of left tackles be drafted early in the previous drafts, I think that's going to put a premium on him in this draft in particular. So it's definitely a possibility, but I wouldn't be too hopeful if I'm a Bengals fan to see his name floating there at 18.
Talk to me about JC Latham. I see him get mocked to the Bengals a lot. You guys have him number 10 on your top 10 production scores, and I don't know if I've seen anyone have him that low. Talk to me about why is JC Latham, who I see get mocked to the Bengals a lot. I think I saw one earlier today. I forgot who that was. I don't want to misspeak, but talk to me about that one.
Yeah, I can talk about that one a little bit, Zim. I think first off, I want to say, like, as you look at these production scores, this is 1/3 of our final grade, and Latham we don't have his confirmed age right now. Dane Brugler puts that all out at the end of the year, but I think he's going to be a 21-year-old come draft time. So this is going to get boosted up a little bit, but we should look at these as kind of a threshold. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. We were tweeting about it a few weeks ago, but if you cross that 70 barrier, that is a go from our side. And so if he tests like an athlete, I think that's somebody that should definitely be in consideration at 18, and I'd still be excited about on the board there. Specifically because of his age, he started in the SEC. He did put up production like a 70. If this goes up to a 75 when his age comes out, that's a good score. If he's an 80th percentile athlete, that's somebody we're still excited about. But what's putting him behind Joe Alt, Amarius Mims? It's a little lower pass blocking score, and we also added in a penalty rate this year that we were looking at. We saw Juwan Taylor. We all saw it for the Chiefs. That was a nightmare all year. And so we want somebody that's clean as a blocker, and Latham did have a bit of a high penalty rate. So as you look at that, might translate to the NFL, but that was something that did bring him down a little bit. Again, somebody I think if he's there at 18, like he looks like a first-round tackle right now still.
Okay. Is there anybody on this list that you feel like we should like kind of, because I don't know, like you said, this is just 1/3 of the grader. Is there anyone on this list that you feel comfortable that you think, like, say the Bengals are able to draft them in the second, third round or something like, or primarily the second for most of these guys towards the bottom of the list, that you feel comfortable saying that I think that this guy has starting potential, maybe he can start? And is there a world that the Bengals could live in where they don't draft the tackle first round and the guy could possibly start?
Yeah, so looking at the list of the 10 that we have on the screen, maybe not immediately in the second round, but some of those third round or fourth round tackles that Andrew and I really like are Christian Jones and Javon Foster in particular. They come from big time programs. I know Christian Jones is a little bit on the older side compared to some of the other guys that we've mentioned, but they really performed well compared to their classmates in this offensive tackle class. And their names that, especially at places like the Senior Bowl and hopefully at the Combine in the upcoming week, really have the opportunity to elevate themselves from what might be the top of that third tier to the bottom or the middle of that second tier. So whether it's the Bengals looking for a starter in the mid rounds, or if they're looking to double dip at the position early on and something in the mid rounds again, those are definitely two names to keep an eye out for. The last one I'll give a shout out to is Dominic Pooney. He might translate better to an interior position when he makes it to the NFL, but I think that he has a solid enough foundation to where there's definitely a lot to work with in his production profile. And I'm excited to follow his career wherever it lands up. Hopefully that's in Cincinnati.
Okay. With that said, we're still talking offensive line. Let's go interior. I've talked to a lot of people even today. The big name that we always hear, I guess, around, like Bengals Twitter, I guess, on the strength of the Senior Bowl and everything like that, is Jackson Powers-Johnson. We were talking about that briefly. Yeah, I had pulled up like a mock or something like that. You were like, shoot, like he was like on a board. Would you target Jackson Powers-Johnson if the board took away a lot of guys that we like? Is that a guy that you think that the Bengals or you would feel comfortable picking first round in this draft? And tell me why.
First off, I want to say, Zim, when you pulled this up, I cringed because this interior offensive line class it's pretty rough, I would say. But
wow,
JPJ is, to me, I don't know if you would draft a Tyler Linderbaum this year at 18. Would you give Creed Humphrey a go if that was the guy on the board at 18? I think he's this year's guy that you can plug him in. And I know a lot of the O-line film guys, Parker Blake, want to shout him out as well. This is one of those guys that is a full go long-term starter. He's an athlete. And so if he's on the board at 18 and all those tackles are gone, that's a pick I'd be really excited about if I was a Bengals fan. It's not sexy, but he's a long-term starter that's an athlete that is young as well. I'm expecting him probably to have a relative athletic score in the 9 range. So I would be pumped if he was a Bengal.
I don't think this draft, this is the first draft that I don't think should look sexy. I really don't. I'm big wide receiver guy. I'm big score. Like I've been that all this time. This is my first draft where I feel like this a little last year too. But I'm really, really interested in like watching all of these teams, particularly in the AFC North, kick our ass. It has taught me, like, I feel like we have the weapons, and I feel like you have Joe Burrow, and protecting them and all these different things have got to be at the forefront, because we saw what we were pretty deflated, even emotionally, watching the Bengals after watching your star quarterback go out. So I just think that it might not look that sexy, and I don't think people should be mad at it. It's not the sexiest looking draft that they've ever seen.
No, and Zim, I completely agree with you on that point. And something that Andrew and I really focus on, especially with the offensive line, is just getting the 5 best athletes and the 5 best offensive linemen out on the field. And something that's really unique about Powers Johnson is that while at Oregon, not only did he play center, but he played both left guard and right guard. And we're not here to talk poorly about anyone on the Bengals currently, but there is a possibility where if you take JPJ at 18, he might not play center in his first year while Karras is still under contract, but he could possibly be one of the best 5 offensive linemen and start at your left guard spot. So, like you said, it's not the sexiest pick if you take an interior swing player who is left guard in year 1 and potentially center in year 2. But that's a position that allows you to get the best 5 players out there and protect number 9, which has definitely been an issue throughout the entirety of his career and should be at top of mind for Duke Tobin and the rest of the Bengals brass.
And then
Ryan, I'll talk poorly. I would say that yeah, we'll disagree there, but I would say there's nobody on the Bengals offensive line right now that has a high ceiling. They've put a floor on there, but these guys, and we posted a graphic out there a few months ago, it's the least athletic offensive line in the NFL. Yeah. So it might be guys that were mildly productive, but if I'm good, the Bengals going into this draft, I want athletes. That's what I'm doing on the offensive line, and I'd be looking to do that early, and I think that's what he would give you.
All right. Okay. So outside of Jackson Powers Johnson, anybody else? I hear Zach Zinter's names a lot, and I also hear Cooper Beebe a lot. Are those guys that are supposed to be more athletic? Is there anybody else on this list that I should be looking at that is more athletic? Those are the 3 that I always hear.
I'd highlight 2 here, Zim, and we're working.
Clay Webb, is he even?
Our lovely friends on Twitter informed us that he's not entering the draft, which is unfortunate, but a name for next year.
So I was watching film, and I actually was watching Clay Webb like the other day. Like this guy, he went to Jackson State and he sent me some stuff, but then he hit me like 2 days ago and was like, yeah, he's not.
Yeah, it sucks because I guess the 2 names I would highlight here, Zim, and they were both at some of the bowl games that recently happened, are Matt Lee and Christian Mahogany as potential athletes. So Zebra technology is a new thing that's been implemented at some of these bowl games that's tracking the speed of these guys. And they were 2 of the fastest offensive linemen there by sprinting speed. So I'm hoping that they test well because these production scores here, they clear that threshold. So those will be targets for us. Can't speak to the athleticism of Beebe or Zinter. Maybe you can a little bit better, Ryan. But those are the 2 guys that have come across our radar pretty early here.
Yeah. Like Andrew said, can't speak too much about them just because I've had limited visibility just on them as individual players. We've had plenty of opportunity to watch them in big-time games just because both of their respective teams performed super well this past season. But I think they're more your typical Bengals types in the sense that those are some glass eaters out there on the offensive line. Beebe especially is ready to get down and dirty in a power run scheme, and that's something that's incredibly valuable, and he's excelled in that role. But if the Bengals are looking to really beef up that offensive line in terms of athleticism, the names that Andrew highlighted are definitely ones that are high on my radar as well.
Cool. With that being said, we're talking glass eaters. We're talking big guys up front. I think it's really, really important. I think what scares me more on the Bengals team currently right now is more the defensive line than the actual offensive line. I thought that was one of the poorest defensive lines. Now, Reader does go out. You have other different things going around. You got Hubbard playing like hurt. You got all these different things going around. But, man, I just thought they got their ass kicked up front. I'm going to pull up your next one. I want to go into give me 1 second. But let me pull up. Let's go into the interior defensive line, my favorite category. Let's go. One of the main conversations that I see online is Murphy or Newton going to be there? One of the things that I tell people, I think out of all of the guys that make these splash plays that I think people aren't talking about enough is Michael Hall Jr. And I think that he has the ability in his ceiling. He does remind me of a couple guys. I don't want to jump the gun. But do you have let's just limit it to the big 3. Let's talk about the differences between those 3. I always see the same too with Murphy and Newton, but I feel like Michael Hall should be in that conversation. But talk to me about those 3.
Yeah, I can start. First off, when you say the Bengals interior defensive line, I just think of those Zach Carter and Tyler Shelvin picks, which I know we have some followers who've been following our work for a while, and those are two of our least favorite picks, I think, in the history of the NFL draft. So not surprising to see them kind of fall out of the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised. Knock on wood if Zach Carter does the same, but we'll see there. I will say, out of these three guys, Byron Murphy, you see the score there over 100. That is not something we do like to see it, but going over 100 is essentially breaking the thresholds that we have in our production metrics. So Byron Murphy is on another level of success, also expecting him to blow up the combine. So he's going to grade in maybe the top 5 of our entire board and would be our number 1 target. It feels like he might be a surefire success there at 18. I think moving down a little bit, Michael Hall's interesting as well. He's younger, about 20 years old, and he has been one of the most productive interior defensive line pass rushers in college football the last few years. The run game, I don't think, is there as much. He reminds me a little bit, thinking back here, of Larry Ogunjobi, where you kind of have that hit or miss guy he can beat the guard, but he might go 5 yards upfield, and I think that shows sometimes.
Just shoot up there. Yeah.
And then, Ryan, I'll pass to you for Newton, because I know Bengals Twitter will get fired up over that one. I don't have him in my mind on that Murphy level, but would still be excited about that pick there at 18. Wouldn't be my first go for an interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, I think what excites me about Newton is that compared to a lot of the players we've discussed already and some of the others in this top 10, he seems to be one of the most well-rounded out of the interior defensive line class. He's a really strong pass rusher, but complements that with a very stout presence against the run as well. And I think that's an area where he might excel over someone like a Michael Hall Jr., who's maybe more in tune with his pass rush ability, but like Andrew said, might not necessarily be as strong against the run. So while he might not have flashed to the same extent that Murphy or Hall did in the pass rush game, he definitely has that nice all-around profile that, while it doesn't necessarily excite us to the same extent that the other two players do, is something that is definitely worth getting behind, and that if he's the pick at number 18 for the Bengals, we will not be upset about it whatsoever. And we might change our tune if some of these other names are on the board, because we would have gone in a different direction personally. But I think what's special about Johnny Newton is he can truly do it all. And I think going into the 2024 season with the current state of the Bengals interior defensive line room, while it might be nice to have someone that's a super pass rusher or someone that is incredibly strong against the run, it's really hard to pass up an all-around player that's going to be on the field for you all 3 downs that can truly make an impact immediately.
Let me ask you this too. I'm glad that you kind of enlightened us on the big 3. Let me ask you, as far as the grading system, I don't know if it's been changed or anything like that from last year versus this year, right? Where did you guys have like Kalijah Kancey at this point last year? What was his grading looking like?
Kalijah Kancey was just under 100 Zim. He was another guy that was just a production monster. Okay. And then he tested off the charts too. I will say he didn't have as good of run production as Byron Murphy. And I have some Texas friends that I've talked about. And Byron Murphy, it sounds like, was more of a run guy than I think anybody gives him credit for, which I think you're getting more of a dual skilled interior defensive lineman there with just rock solid production. So he's the best interior defensive lineman we have scored in production. And I'm expecting the athleticism will be the same, making him the best we've seen, even ahead of Jalen Carter in the last, 3 or 4 years.
Wow. One of my strategies, if we get to this mock simulator or whatever, one of my strategies is if I don't go with Murphy or Newton in the first round, then I come back in the second and I go with Sweat or Leonard Taylor. Chris Jenkins, I always see him on the board too. I haven't watched any film on him. I'm not a big college football watcher. I watch a lot of college football at this time, so I haven't got a chance to see him yet. Do you have any thoughts on like second round T'Vondre Sweat, Leonard Taylor, or Chris Jenkins is there?
T'Vondre Sweat. That's not even close for me. He put up
2 guys.
Ryan, I hope you were about to say the same. He put up, just running through our database, production that mimicked some really high level, like all pro level defensive tackles in the NFL. And then doing it at his weight is something, I don't know, we've never seen before. To have this level of production as a 360 pounder is like quite frankly ridiculous, but we'll see if he tests at the combine. I'm a little worried he might not, but that would be my number one go-to there.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance that he might even be there in a second? Maybe these mocks are all off.
I personally think he should be there in the second round. I think Andrew hit it on the head. There are definitely some weight concerns. Looking through our database of all the players we've looked at, there's only 2 that have really had a similar level of production and success at 350 pounds or heavier, and that's Jordan Davis and Travis Jones. And I'm not ready to say that Tavondre Sweat is at either of those 2 players' levels just yet. But if he can come down from that 360-pound range to something in the 350 or 340s and put up an athletic show at the combine, there definitely is a lot to be excited about in his production profile, especially his pass rush win rate at that size. It was almost equivalent to what Johnny Newton put up this past season as well, higher than what Chris Jenkins put up. So what Sweat is able to do at that size with that level of athleticism is, like I mentioned before, something we've only seen with 2 other players in the 5 years we've been doing this. So it really is impressive and something to keep an eye on in the second round.
Okay. I mean, I think every single time that I go through this, it's really tough for me to kind of say, like, these are my targets without going into, what have the Bengals done in free agency or whatever. That's why I talked to you guys, like, a couple different times. I said, man, once we do this, we might have to do a part 2 after the combine at some point when we get past free agency or so. I need to, like, really see a full picture.
My thought on that, Zim, is we try to not even look at that, and the reason being is if the Bengals go into the draft being forced to draft for need, I feel like that's where issues come up. That's where you end up with a Billy Price drafting because you need a position, and the best teams don't do that. They're drafting the Ravens. They're drafting the best talent on their board every time around, and it's worked out for them. And that is like my one hope for the Bengals is set your board, draft the best player there, find a place for them, fill out your needs in free agency so you don't have to do that when you come to the draft.
We're on the same page, bro. I meet so many people that I talk to every single day, and they're just like, nah, I don't like that guy. I'm like, man, I'm just trying to fill in a couple spots of competent play. And later on, I feel like I like my draft board and tight end being one of those positions because they absolutely have no one under contract currently right now, which brings me to my next board. We've got tight end led by Brock Bowers, the dream of someone like me, a young man just sitting around waiting all day for that name to get called, 19 flying on the screen. If Brock Bowers, I might go to the draft too. If Brock Bowers goes to the Bengals, look out, where I'm gonna do a contest, everything like that. Let's talk me through this really quick. I have a theory on this. The first tight end that was taken last year in the NFL draft was at pick number 25. It was Dalton Kincaid. Receiving abilities, I don't think that they're that much different as far as receiving. Now, the blocking portion and the other parts of the game, you talk to me about Brock Bowers and how do you feel about Brock Bowers overall as a prospect, just on your overall board, not even talking tight end.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in there quickly before Andrew gets the chance just to
that's his guy too.
No, just to sing Andrew's praises a little bit because he put together an incredible database that allows us to look at the seasons Brock Bowers put together and compare them to the college seasons of some of the best tight ends currently in the league. And somewhere on our Twitter page, if you scroll back, you might be able to find that graphic. But to share some of the names with you among Brock Bowers' comparables for not only one season, but his entire collegiate career, you're looking at guys like Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, Michael Mayer, and even Zim, like you mentioned, Dalton Kincaid, that first tight end off the board last year. And what's crazy is that not only was Brock Bowers in college able to replicate what all of those tight ends did in 1 year, but he was actually able to do it for all 3 years of his college career and actually exceed what all of those players did in each of their seasons every 3 times that he suited up for Georgia in each of his 3 seasons. So I'll turn it over to Andrew to give a little bit more of that analytical purview. But I think it's just important to note that as far as the generational label is concerned, Andrew might fight me on this, but I truly think it applies here, especially when you look at the data on him.
Why would I fight you on that? We've been diving through that, and so we have like 10 years Zim going back, so nothing before that. But when I pulled up his name, the comparables are just ridiculous. They're your top 5 tight ends in the NFL. And like Ryan said, those guys did it one time. Brock Bowers did it 3 times, including as an 18-year-old freshman in the SEC. And I think, and a lot of the film guys have said the same, you're looking at a different type of tight end. It's a guy that's going to give you a lot after the catch. And he is a good run blocker. I'm kind of worried he's going to come in a little bit small, potentially like 6'2", 235. So he's a different type of player than what you'd be looking at with some traditional tight ends. But I think if there's a guy on that board that's going to give you the option to have one of the best offenses in the NFL, make a Super Bowl run, have that impact, that's the guy I would want. I just don't see any world, and I will knock on wood here again, where he is not a top 3 tight end of the NFL in 3 years. I just think his profile is that strong, and there just aren't examples of guys like Brock Bowers who have failed.
I guess the bigger question that Bengals fans like myself are sitting there saying, is there a world where he can fall out of the top 10?
I think so. If he comes in at the combine, he's 6'2", 235, and tight end, like you mentioned, last year the first guy was Dalton Kincaid in the 20s. You don't often see tight ends go that early. I mean, Kyle Pitts maybe was the last example, super high. So there's that could happen. And I was actually looking through this morning to just see, and there's not that many teams that need a tight end. I think
I created a list.
Chargers,
I created a list. You got to see it.
You have them? Yeah, you have them up.
I went through every single team. You gotta tell me, am I off base with this? Hold on, let's look at this real quick. I wrote this out. One of my guys, he's a really good follower. He loves the draft too. His name is B-Rad. He wrote something similar to this one time. Number 1, Bears have Cole Kmet. Number 2, I mean, we're not Washington Commanders quarterback. Patriots, they need a lot of things. I'm not thinking tight end. Number 4, Arizona already has Trey McBride. Chargers are the real one. You think about what's his name? The ring coordinator that's now OC, Greg, that used to be with the Ravens.
Greg
Roman.
Yeah. You got that. You got Harbaugh, who likes to run his system through tight ends. You got all that. Like, to me, that was the question. That's why I asked you. I said, if Joe Alt's on the board, or best edge guy, Latu or whatever is on the board, or like one of these guys is like right there, could you see like a bottom 5, bottom 10 team picking Brock Bowers at 6'2" against one of the best prospects on the a neighbors or whatever, for like if you're the Chargers?
I could see it. We see weird picks all the time, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a chance at Joe Alt, I don't know why you would be taking Brock Bowers, to be honest. I mean, I think like the Chargers, they need a lineman pretty bad. So I don't know. I mean, we could see it. But like you said, you've gone through and
Giants,
early. It's tough.
Giants already paid Darren Waller. Titans already have Chika Kongwo, but their Titans fans are really excited about Brock Bowers. They think he's going there. I don't know if you saw some of his comments. Atlanta already has Kyle Pitts. Number 9, same. Number 10, Jets already have like 5 tight ends. Vikings already have TJ Hawkinson at 11. Denver, that would be like the sweet spot. They have Troutman already on the team. Raiders, they just drafted Michael Mayer. 14, Saints is a realistic one to me. But at that point, I'm asking the Bengals to go and trade up.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing when you're asking if Brock Bowers is going to be available at 18 for the Bengals is just factoring in how much talent is available at the top of this draft class across all positions compared to what we've seen in previous years. And if you're expecting at minimum 3 quarterbacks to go, at minimum 3 wide receivers, minimum 3 offensive tackles, you're already at and past pick 9, and you're praying that 8 more selections come, with potentially Brock Bowers still available for you at 18. So I think it's a realistic option that he's available at 18, but I also think it's a realistic option, like you said, Zim, that the Chargers might dip into their bag and take Bowers at number 5. So there's certainly a wide range of outcomes, but just with how much sheer talent we have at the offensive skill positions and I'll even throw offensive tackle among the skill as a big skill position as well. There's definitely a realistic possibility that just with positional value and like Andrew mentioned, what could be a little bit more of a smaller stature than we're expecting, it could be there for the Bengals at 18, and it could be a dream come true for a lot of Bengals fans.
That would be insane. All right. So that I just had to go live on a cloud for a second. I'm gonna get off the cloud. Let's get back to reality. Tight ends outside of Brock Bowers later in the draft. Talk to me about some of these prospects that maybe you might target later in the draft, whether it be the second, third, or fourth round.
Yeah, I'll go there, Zim. So this class, it's tough. I would say there's like no depth here. We're looking at 5 guys, and they're the 5 guys showing up here that I would be interested in, that I believe are going to be pushed up because this class doesn't have nearly the depth that was there last year. So with teams who need tight ends, I would guess they're going to be thinking the same way as the Bengals. And you'll see Wincinnati here. He's one guy that I think should go in the second round, Ryan. I don't know if you're going to disagree with me there, but he's young. He's 20 to 21 years old. His profile also mimics a lot of the guys who are very good starting tight ends in the NFL, sometimes showing up with Brock Bowers and some of the yards after catch ability. And I think he might get a bad rep because he wore a fullback number in college. He was at Kansas State. People don't look at him like a tight end, but he's 6'5", 250, expecting he'll be a good athlete too. And I think he'll have a after combine push. So he would be our number 1 target there, even ahead of Jatavian Sanders, which I think is going to go higher than I would be interested in picking him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Sanat is a realistic round 2 target for all of the reasons that Andrew mentioned. One guy that I'll throw out there is Jaheim Bell. I think he's a little bit different in the sense that he's more of a out wide type player, really shifty with the ball in his hands, great yards after catch, forces a lot of missed tackles. And if you're looking for more of that big slot type player, someone who can get open underneath and really create with the ball in their hands, but might not contribute as much as an inline blocker, Jaheim Bell is someone that can really open and spread out the Bengals offense if that's something that they're looking for. So that's a name to keep an eye on as well.
If you want Gerald Everett, that's your guy. That was actually the one comparable Jaheim Bell came across. And I think we tweeted that one a few times. So I'd be excited with that pick. You get him
and in free agency,
3.
I would love Everett. I just don't know if I would love Jaheim Bell undersized or hit that stature.
Similar size to Gerald Everett.
Yeah,
not too far off him. Yeah, not too far off.
Okay. And Sanders, what about his measurables? Where is he at?
He's really young. He's interesting. I mean, I bet he's going to run a 4.4, 4.5 40, which
that's what everybody
will
said.
put him in, like, as you think about tight ends, and this is a Joe Goodberry metric that he was talking about a lot last year, and we went and dove in a little bit more. If you want a tight end 1, you want a guy running under a 4.7 40. Jatavian Sanders will clear that by far. But he is a guy that didn't have much yards after catch ability. He also doesn't drop passes. I think he'd run the seam. And that's kind of what his profile showed. And so I'd be looking to, if you can get him at 49, I wouldn't be mad about that pick. I'd feel more comfortable at 80. I'd prefer Ben Sinnott, I think, in that scenario, but he's one of the 5 guys that I would still be excited about as a tight end in this draft.
Okay. So with that being said, we're getting lower on time. Do you have any prospects that you just want to just shout out to say, these are guys that should be on the Bengals radar? I know that that's such a broad statement. That you're doing over 500 prospects. I don't know if you had any thoughts on the wide receivers or anything like that, or corners or whatever. Is there someone that you just feel like Bengals Twitter does not talk enough about?
Talk about some running backs there, Ryan. I know we have that list of.
Yeah, why is my guy Braylon Allen not on the list at all?
Dude, he got worse all 3 years. He has over 600 carries in college. I think that's outside of the Bengals thresholds for running backs they would pick early. We've actually highlighted 9 of them, a list that we'll probably share on Twitter later. But there's, I think, 2 guys in that list that I would be targeting early. I think Marshawn Lloyd and Jonathan Brooks. So Marshawn Lloyd from USC, Jonathan Brooks from Texas are both going to grade out similarly to Tyjae Spears and even Jahmyr Gibbs last year for us. And I don't think this running back class is getting enough hype. So that would be my one plug. I think there's very good running backs in this class that are going to be able to be had at a value. And we'll get that list out there on Twitter so people can look at that. But we're looking for guys with less than 500 career carries that are elusive, using PFF's metrics, and also that have good receiving ability and that are over 200 pounds. So looking for more of a bell cow that could replace Joe Mixon. And we found 9 guys in this class that meet that.
I need to see that list. We need to retweet that and get that out there to the absolutely. What about you, Ryan? You got some guys?
Yeah, Zim, when you mentioned corner, I had a big smile on my face because I think one of the best ways to protect your defensive line is if you have some really solid coverage on the back end. And as much as I love the young corners and Taylor Britt and Turner, and even throw Dax Hill and Jordan Battle out there at safety, there's always room for improvement, especially with what we saw last year. So on the safety end, it might not be the sexiest pick, but I think Tyler Nubin is an absolute guy. And if he's available there at 49 or even at 80, it's something realistic to consider, because not getting too much into scheme, if you draft him and want to move Dax Hill into the slot, I think that really opens up a lot of versatility for the defense. The other name that I'll mention, who's a specifically corner-only player, is going to be Dwight McGlothern from Arkansas. He graded out on the production profile as one of the highest corners we have this year. We'll have to do a little bit of a deeper dive into his profile individually when we have some more time after the show, but that's a name that I think deserves a lot more loved among the draft community, and especially among Bengals fans if you're looking to just add some really solid and athletic depth at the corner position.
Nice. All right, let's get into this. Let's put you on the hot seat. We're going to do something live. We're going to get busy, what I call the pressure cooker. We're going to put you on a live draft simulator, and we're going to talk through it as fast as we probably can. Don't want you guys to I don't want to take up your whole night, but we're going to go through it, talk through the board, and put the people that are listening and watching that are now subscribing and cutting alerts on through the heater with you guys from Gridiron Grading. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Ryan's way more familiar with these simulators than I am, but let's go. All
right. So can you see that on the screen? Because when I'm doing this, I can't see you, but I can see my screen, so it's kind of weird. All right. So I'm gonna go 4 rounds. No trades. We're just gonna go look at the board as it goes off. It is gonna go pretty fast. If you're listening on a pod, you're not gonna see all the names that go off. I should have signed in, I didn't, but we're gonna start up the draft. So all goes off the board. Fuaga, Newton, all these guys go off the board. We're looking at it. PFF has identified that our number one needs are tight end, tackles, and defensive interior. I don't know if you guys can see this, but Malik Neighbors goes off. All Roma Doomsday. I wanted to ask you guys about him. I'll ask you about that off the show. Excuse me. Brock Bowers goes to the Falcons. So now Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers go crazy. Byron Murphy is now a Jet. Fuaga goes number 13 to the Raiders, much to my chagrin. Terrion Arnold. Do you have a quick thought that you could tell me on him? Because I watched him over the weekend, just highlights, not deep dive tape. I was really impressed. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's a dog. But one thing I will say about his profile is he definitely benefited from having Kool-Aid on the opposite side. And I think part of why we see Terrion having such a successful season, especially with his ball production, is because teams were just afraid to throw it Kool-Aid's way. So that's not to take anything away from Arnold as a prospect. He's incredible in press man coverage. I love what he put on tape, but I think it's just something to keep in mind. So definitely a first-round corner for us, but it'll be interesting to see how it falls on draft day if he's actually CB1.
Okay. All right. So I went through this. We got a trade offer, but the way that this screen is really wonky. All right. So on the board, we got Jackson Powers Johnson. We got Latu from, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, the edge from UCLA, JC Latham, Kool-Aid, who you just talked about, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels. I don't believe that we're going to be on the market for quarterbacks. Very interesting. But Brian, you got Brian Thomas, who I think a lot of people have talked about a lot as a possible for the non. We talked about how the draft could look non-sexy, no wide receivers. But Brian Thomas is on the board as a possibility. Your guy Mims is still there. I'm just going through the top because we're at the beginning. And then you got One of my favorite guys, I went to NC State, Peyton Wilson. I want to talk to you guys about him another time. But Tyler Guyton's also on the board. Anybody that you just are running to the podium with saying that board?
So Latu is the one. If he tests well at the combine, I would, and I know they don't need an edge, so that's tough. But if he tests well at the combine, he's going to be top 5 on our board. He was just an absolute animal at UCLA, putting up edge production that we've never seen. I want to caveat that with because his speed scores at the Senior Bowl were not as strong as I would like to see. So I'm a little bit worried he might test poorly. That's keeping me from running at this moment. But Ryan, I'm between JPJ and Amarius Mims here. I don't think
people
go wrong either way.
Got people in here saying that we should trade out of the pick. We got somebody, Matt, saying more pass rushes the better.
Yeah.
Where are you at, Ryan?
I don't know if I could trade out here with the option of having JPJ and Mims.
No, I think Andrew's right. The trade out to me isn't an available option just with the amount of talent we have on the board. I think personally I'm leaning between JPJ and Mims. One thing I will say about Latu is that love what he put together on the field, but he's an older prospect. There are a couple of medical red flags. So even if the combine does go well, something to note that he might drop just because there are knee injuries and there are other things going on. So just for the safety of this pick, and hoping that the Bengals can take this to elevate their offensive floor and hopefully its ceiling too. Andrew, if you have a preference between JPJ or Mims, run that card into the podium.
I'm going Mims here, Zim, and I think that's because of I value tackle a little bit more as a premium position. And I think Mims, if you want to tackle like the Bengals haven't had in our recent memory, that's the guy that at some point you got to give Frank Pollock some talent to work with. And he's the guy that I think just.
What do you say for the guy that says that, well, we need to strengthen the interior of the offensive line. We need our version of Creed Humphrey right now. You got Jackson Power Johnson right there in your face.
I think the first thing we say is what we go back to before. It doesn't matter who the body is at this point, as long as you get the best 5 out there. And regardless of if it's JPJ or Mims, I can guarantee that they're going to be at least one of those top 5. So whether you're creating the pocket from the front to the back or whether you're creating the pocket from the sides out, something's got to give at this point. And like Andrew said, we got to give Frank Pollock some talent, and Mims has that super high ceiling that I think is super attractive to the both of us.
Let's do it. Let's run the card. Let's go Mims. So Mims goes off. Latham comes off the board. I think Franklin, the wide receiver, Bo Nix goes off the board. The picks are flying off. Jermaine Burton goes off the board right before us. Roman Wilson goes off the board. Jatavian Sanders goes off the board, goes to the Raiders. So now they're running 13 and 12 personnel.
Man, we need J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix to go much higher. I expect they will. That'll help Bengals fans if we can get them going in the top 15.
We need them to go way higher than that. Kean Coleman's off the board too. So all the sexy wide receiver people that are viewing this. All right, here we go. There are different trade options, but because I don't want to add too much craziness to this, we're doing picks 49 and 80 coming up. But on the board currently right now, we got Chop Robinson, the edge from Penn State, Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver, Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker, the corner, Mike Sanristil. Is that how you say it? I see his name a lot. Okay. This board is not. I'm not liking this board. Chris Jenkins is there. Jonathan Brooks, Kalen Bullock, Ricky Purcell. The tackle you guys had pretty. I think you guys had him at.
If the Bengals don't go a tackle at 18 and Kieran is able to test at the combine, I think that is a tackle name worth considering at 49.
Christian Haynes
obviously doesn't make sense here.
Yeah, Do you want to look at just a specific position? Why is my screen?
I was gonna say, Zim, is Sweat still on the board, or did they update the simulator recently?
I think Sweat came off. It won't let me isolate my. Let's say something. For whatever reason, it's cutting off my screen. Oh no, he's there.
Damn,
they got him ranked 90 though.
Yeah, they're treating my man dirty. But Andrew, I don't know how you're feeling. Normally, we don't get the chance to see Chop on the board at this point in time, and I know his 2023 was a little bit underwhelming compared to what he put on tape and on the production in 2022. But that's a young and a lean and an athletic pass rusher that really catches my eye at this point. So I'm kind of thinking between Chop or Sweat.
I won't disagree with you on Chop. I think he's going to be one of the better testers at the combine. He will clear our production threshold of 70. So that's a guy I would definitely be curious and not expecting him to be there at 49 after the combine. I'd be curious to see what tight ends are there, if there are any worth taking a look at here. It doesn't look like it.
No, I think PFF just updated their simulator and moved Sanat from 160 to 130. So they're still super low on our boy.
Yeah, that's rough. Tough scene. Ultimately, if I was making the pick here, it would be Tavondre Sweat. Even though they have him at 90, there's no chance he's there in the third round. That would be my go-to pick here.
Yeah, I second that. It's pretty chalk, but I think the combo of Mims and Sweat solidifies both of your trenches. And to me, I think it's the easiest selection right now on the board.
Sometimes you just got to put some realism behind it. Can't be taking Sweat in the third round, Sanat in round 6. Sam, we got you on mute, brother.
So sorry about that. Yeah. All right, let me take a look at this. Okay, so Malachi Corley is still on the board. Braden Fisk. We haven't talked about him at all.
I don't think we need to. He's going to be like 25 come draft time. Zim didn't clear production thresholds. Okay. That's not a guy we're overly keen on. I know. He's also, I believe he's under 300 pounds, Ryan. You can correct me on that. He's pretty small.
I think he's hovering around that mark. We've got him listed most recently at 6'4", 305. So depending on where you're looking and who's listing him, if it's Florida State doing it, could be a little bit of a boost to him. So if he's under 300 pounds and grading how he is for us, I think he's currently IDL number 13 on our board. It's something that I might try and stay away from at least for a couple more rounds.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah, I don't want the old guy. I can't. Michael Hall Jr. is still on the board. We could double dip at D tackle.
I wouldn't be opposed to something like that. I think that's a good strategy for them.
Patrick Paul still on the board. All your tight ends are still on the board. You got the Malachi Corley, who a lot of people are calling Debo. I don't know from a production standpoint, does that match up what Debo did in college?
I don't know about that one, Zim. I haven't actually pulled those comparables on Corley, but it's interesting. That might be one I want to take a look at. I know his body type. I've seen tons of it. I think seeing the same thing you have. Not super high on him from a pure production standpoint, but profile-wise, there might be something there.
Okay. So we got Sanat still on the board. You got Malachi Corley on there. The old man Fisk, Patrick Paul. You got Spencer Rattler. You want to back up. Cedric Van Pran is a guy I haven't heard you guys speak on at all. And
I'm eyeing the defensive lineman here. I think Marshawn Nealand and Michael Hall stand out to me here.
Damn,
I don't know.
Michael Hall is nasty with Sweat too. I mean, I feel like we would be.
Yeah. That's that. If he's there in round 3, I think I'm running to the podium. He's going to test well too.
D-line problem solved for sure.
Yeah, I think as much fun as it would be to go Sanat and take a tight end and get that position versatility, I think getting your nose tackle and your 3 tech in the same draft who can both rush the passer at above average levels is something that other teams in the AFC North should look out for, because their interior offensive line is about to have some tough days ahead.
The crazy thing about it too is the way that this board is and the way they got it set up. I feel like we could go get the tight end in the 4th.
Yeah, you could probably come back. The way it's set up now, if there's not a run on running backs, you have an option for tight end or running back BPA there. Yeah, I would be running to the podium with Michael Hall. He's going to have a first-round grade on our board, I'm thinking right now, and so that's what I'm doing.
So we put the pick in. We put Michael Hall in. Shout out to Ace. Ace did just jump on too. If you're listening to the podcast and like, who is that other guy that just ended up talking just now? That was Ace. I want to make sure. Oh, it don't let me do the 3 rounds. 4th round, we would have came back with tight end, I'm sure. But we went with Mim Sweat. Yeah, that's right. I didn't sign in the PFF to get me longer than 3 rounds. But I thought we had a good little.
We did the trenches draft that we talked about at the beginning.
Man, that's
the way it goes.
Yeah,
they killed this draft. I think you're looking at three starters.
Yeah, if you're looking at those 3 names, it's an easy A on the draft grade from any analyst. And if someone's not giving you that A, they need to figure something else out for their career, because this is an easy slam dunk for the trenches.
No, that's a trenches draft right there. I think Bengal Nation would be happy to have that one for sure.
That is beautiful. Ryan, Andrew, you've been so gracious with your time and everything like that. Do you have anything that you want to be able to tell the people where they could check you guys out? Where can they follow you? Tell them about it. And after that, I wanted to give Ace did you have a question before that Ace that you wanted to ask him, whatever, in that time frame?
No, man. I mean, these guys have been gratefully insightful. We appreciate for having you guys on. Wish I could have been here earlier, but I was listening. Had to play daddy tonight, but was able to listen in some, and I was like, man, I gotta hop in here and catch you guys. So you guys did great with knocking the ball out of the park with the draft, and once again, love the work that you guys do over there, and definitely will be looking and keeping up with your stuff coming forward and the stuff that you guys already have out there.
Appreciate it. Yeah, sometimes there's more important things in the NFL draft, although we rarely find them. But I will say you can find us at Gridiron Grading on Twitter. We have a website where if you guys start to see some of our content come out, pull up our website. We have all our old boards. You can compare what we did in previous drafts to what the class looks like this year. I think a little bit of a spoiler. We are looking at one of the best classes we've seen, probably similar to 2021 in terms of high-level talent at the top, but we'll be producing content after the combine, looking at production compared to athleticism, have some of those charts and graphics, and we'll be wrapping up some of our final production scores this week. But plenty of content still to come. Appreciate you guys having us on, and it'll continue to be pretty Bengals-centric here. I know this is a big one for us.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate both of you guys being gracious with your time again. Shout out to the guys at Gridiron Grading. Make sure that you check them out. Make sure you cut on alerts and make sure that you stay in tune with those guys, especially heading to the combine. Appreciate you guys.
Right.
Hey, thank y'all so much for having us. We'll see you next time. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was great, bro. That was great information, man.
Good stuff.
I was Braylon Allen, them not having. I thought that was like I'm waiting for that ranking that they said they had on the running backs, and I think that just shows that they're deep diving in and know their stuff, because a lot of the people that I've heard haven't really talked much about the running back. So for them to hear that there's some like steals and potential people that the Bengals could get at running back, I'm excited to see those rankings that they have for the running backs.
You know what I'm excited to see?
What's up?
Uno wings.
Shout out to Midwest Best Barbecue 669 Justice Court in Loveland, Ohio. Get you some Uno wings, get you some CTB wings. Definitely kick back and get you some stuff from there. Stop by and let them know Ace and Zim sent you. All kinds of great food. Even though we're in the off season, you can still get great food at Midwest Best Barbecue.
Yeah, man. I feel like we had a really good show. Had the guys from Gridiron Grading. I kept on seeing them. I don't know if the algorithm just kept on like putting their content in my peripheral. But what happened is I used the list And then I started looking at tape and stuff based off of those guys. And then I started like that started probably it's been almost like a month now. And I've just been working off of their list and using that as like the guys that I want to look at the most. So I would encourage everybody to check them out. I'm pretty excited about this draft because I do feel like there's some long-term answers. And I don't think that the Bengals have to go so crazy with like this mountain pile of players. Like you could literally go into the draft with 3 go get a right tackle. Like let's say they do make a splash and it's Mike Onway, do Noah Fant, and then Sheldon Rankins. I would be good with just saying let's go to the draft. I feel like you can go get your future corner. I feel like you can go get your future running back. You could go get so many different things. And the Bengals have 9 picks. We had some real good combos. Did you have any takeaways or anything that you wanted to add to that conversation or anything you see, moving forward?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed it, man, because I've been following them for I think about a year or two now. The production scores that they have are very good because production is something that the Bengals really do pay attention to, and I think that they do a great job in that department. I think that they've done some great stuff with what they've provided insight on, and I think the only thing I missed. Did you guys get to talk wide receivers or no? Did y'all talk wide receivers?
Nah, not at all. I felt like I was probably talking too much, but we got into the trenches so much, and then with the Brock Bowers conversation, and then we started tight end, and I felt like, it's kind of crazy, but I feel like for the first year, it's just like enough is enough, bro. I feel like the trenches just took the forefront, but when we got into the draft simulator, I was looking at it and saying, damn, like some wide receivers on the board.
they did say, I thought the Jatavion Sanders ranking, but obviously it's just from a production standpoint. I thought that was interesting because mostly everybody I've seen has had him like second. And I kind of like people that have different opinions than just like the typical norm. So I know that they still said that they liked him, but I was wondering, what was the reason that he was so much farther down than some of the other guys? But it seems like it must have to do with production. And then I think they said some interesting things about Bell. I think they kind of compared him to one of the guys. I think they compared him to that tight end
Gerald Everett. And I would be in love with Gerald Everett if the Bengals signed him in free agency.
Yeah, so I thought that was dope, man. I'm gonna have to go back and pretty much start from the beginning, but they were a great guest to have on, and they give a lot of good information.
I feel like Gerald Everett gives you more in the blocking game than what I think Bell does, though. And that's the part where they're taking their grading scores, they're taking all these different things, and they're putting it all together. And they said they're doing less on film because they want to be able to get the 500 prospects. But I think the willingness, which wouldn't show up on the score of Everett to block, is part of the reason why I like Everett. But those are the things that we're going to find out moving forward. I think that's it, partner.
Yeah, we got a super chat here from the regular dude. 2 words, tight end, pause. But yeah, we definitely need to look at a tight end possibly as well. But it seems like from what they said, this might not really be a great class. It's like 5 guys.
If you don't get one at the top, and I think if the second round shows us trenches like that board just showed us just now, and there's some guys that even they had on their list from the tackle position that say you didn't get one in the first and you went trenches in the first.
Yeah.
The first and the second rounds, it's just hard for me to say tight end if it isn't Bowers, because the guys like Bell and all them, they're comparable to. I could go get Noah Fant before we even, there's so many ways to cut.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's just so many different ways, but I'm not as gung-ho on tight end, especially if they were to go get like a Noah Fant or somebody like that. We just do this whole thing, this song and dance again. If Brock Bowers is on the board, I don't think they would even trade up. If Brock Bowers mentions at 6'2", I could see him falling like at least to 14, 15.
For sure.
Haven't done anything in free agency, who knows?
Yes, sir. I agree.
But that was the Wincinnati pod. Shout out to the regular dude with that super chat. Appreciate y'all. Keep on rocking with us. Stay tuned. I know we're a little shaky sometimes on the Tuesday versus Thursday, but we try to stay around that 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Make sure that you follow. Make sure you tell a friend. Please retweet this and make sure that you show other people our draft analysis show that we just did beforehand. Make sure you check out the Wincinnati Pulse. The Pulse is also doing their thing too. So they just did a mock on their show that was listed, I think, yesterday as well too. So make sure if you have any streaming platform currently right now, Spotify, Apple, make sure you check them out on there as well as YouTube as well. And that's it for us. Peace out.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm Ace.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season. I'm still going to give you the same AJ.
I'm gonna work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all boys.
I gotta get you a top 5 receiver.
Better, man. You're real. Watch out for us.